Hey everyone, Ryan here at Etrailer. Today on our 2023 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Custom Fit stoplight switch kit. But before we do that, let's just take a minute and make sure this is a part that you're going to even need. So really, a stoplight switch kit is going to be applicable in two different scenarios. We'll start with probably the most popular, which is setting up a Jeep to be flat towed. Okay, and so your supplemental braking systems, the ones that require or have an indicator light, that's where the stoplight switch is going to come into play. It's going to send a signal out to your supplemental braking system, letting it know that, hey, the brake pedal's being pushed down, and that's going to tell it to illuminate your indicator light. And just right off the top of my head, there's the Demco stay and play that could benefit from this, whether it be the regular one or the one that has a wireless coach link monitor, as well as the Roadmaster Invisi Brake supplemental braking system. I'm sure there's more out there, but those are just ones that pop into my head that are popular, at least the ones that we set up here. And a stoplight switch is going to be required essentially because what happens, the Jeep, you know, it's going to have an inactive factory switch, if you will. So you're not able to pull power from the factory stoplight switch to achieve that signal, right? A bunch of stuff can happen there. So using the Roadmaster one, you're in good shape. Another reason, the reason that we have used it here today, is if you go to set up a trailer brake controller, okay? And that's kind of the same thing. A brake controller needs to know whenever you push down on the brake pedal inside of the Jeep here, right? Because then it takes in information and sends power essentially back to your trailer's brakes. That way they can be applied. And again, for the same reasons that we just talked about, that's where the stoplight switch is going to come into play. You know, you can set that up. That's going to provide your trailer brake controller with that input that it needs to work properly. One of the nice things about this kit is the fact that it is custom fit for the Jeep. So the bracket is already bent, you know, the way it needs to be. Utilizes some factory hardware that's already underneath the dash, and you know, it makes it a lot easier when you have something that's made for your particular vehicle to get it all set up. So other than that, at the end of the day, ultimately, if you're setting up a flat tow and your braking system has that indicator light, or you're setting up a trailer brake controller, this is something that you're going to need. As far as the installation goes, it's really not too bad, especially if you're doing this at the same time you're installing other components. But you are up underneath the dash. You can remove this panel here. It opens things up a little bit. And I'll show you how I do it to kind of make it a little easier on you. Try to do as much work outside from under the dash as possible. That way it goes quick when you are under there. So hang around. We'll go ahead and get started on it now. To get the stoplight switch in place, makes it much easier to remove this center panel underneath the steering wheel. Just gives you a lot more room to work. And with it, essentially it's just held in with plastic fasteners, and so you can just simply pull on it and get it removed. We'll get this out of our way. You can grab your stoplight switch, and I like to kind of prep it as much as possible. So strip the insulation back on each end of the wire there. On one end, I crimped on the green wire. Doesn't matter which color wire goes where, as long as you got them both hooked up. And then kits that come with a red wire as well. And I twist up the end here. We'll grab the butt connectors that they give us and hook this one up too. I notice with the wires coming out of the switch, they're a little on the thin side, so I strip them back long and kind of double them over like that. Get both of them crimped down. Not bad either, just so you don't have a bunch of loose wires, because once you're up under the dash, everything becomes more difficult, just to kind of bundle them together a little bit, and makes it a little more manageable when you're hooking everything up. You can grab the bracket, and one end of it's going to have notches in it. That's going to be the end that will bolt up underneath the dash here in a moment. But this side, what you can do, take one of the nuts and the star washers off the switch, put the switch through the bracket, put the star washer on, and the nut back on. And that's how you're going to actually be able to adjust this, right? So it'll go forward and back. And what we're looking to accomplish is this little plunger here. All right, say if my finger is a brake pedal arm, when the brake pedal's just sitting there, you're not pushing on it or anything, you want that plunger to essentially be almost pushed in completely. All right, and then that way, you know, say, like I said, my finger's brake pedal arm, when you start to push down on the brake, that plunger comes out, and when that happens, that completes a connection in the switch here and lets power go through. All right, and that's going to be our brake signal. And so when you set this up, because it's, like I said, hard to see under the dash, you can take, I believe this is a 17 millimeter and a 14 millimeter size, but you can make those adjustments to get that plunger to sit how you need it to there. So I just kind of start in the middle here and get it hand tight and go from there. So underneath the dash, right to the left of the steering column, essentially, there's going to be a nut there. And that's what we can remove and slide the other end of our bracket on and tighten back down. I marked it with an arrow to indicate that. And I believe it's a 13 millimeter head. So I'll go ahead and pull that off and set our bracket up and then show you what it looks like once I'm done here. I got our switch mounted up there, and this is how it turned out once it's all bolted down. Now you can move underneath the hood, and we're going to be over on the passenger side by the battery. And you can take the fuse holder that they give you, crimp on a ring terminal and a butt connector, and then you are going to have some of your own wiring, probably I'd say 6 to 8 foot. Be on the safe side. You're going to connect it to that, and we're going to route that inside of the vehicle, which I'll show you in a minute. But for the time being, make sure the fuse is not installed just yet. And we're actually going to hook this to battery power. And I'm just going to use that post right there. So I'm going to remove that nut with a 10 millimeter. Put the ring terminal over it. Just tighten it back down. That wire that gets routed inside, I just ran it along through here loosely, and once we're done, I'll come back and zip tie it up and clean it up. But that's going to run all the way over to the driver's side of our vehicle. So our wire runs over here, and on the majority of the Jeeps, right in this area, you're going to have a big grommet that you could poke a hole in and push a wire through. But that's only on automatic transmissions. We have a standard, so we're not able to do that. So what I did was just follow down the firewall a little bit more and drill a hole, and used a grommet, push through there, and was able to pass the wiring into the cab that way. Back inside of the cab here, this is where the power wire come down, and I used a butt connector to hook that up to the red wire on our stoplight switch. Like I said before, it don't really matter. You could always hook it to green if you wanted, as long as we have both hooked up eventually. And the green one, what you're going to hook up to that is just depending on what you're doing. All right, so in our case, we're installing a brake controller, a trailer brake controller, and so I hooked up the red wire from our brake controller adapter plug to that. So that's going to be our brake signal. Now these a lot of times are used in flat tow setups when you pull your vehicle behind the motorhome, if that's what you're using this for, you know, check your braking system's instructions, but the vast majority of the time, this wire here is going to get hooked up to the wire from your braking system's indicator light setup. So each one's going to be a little bit different, but this is going to be your brake signal ultimately. You want to come back under the hood now, take our fuse for our stoplight switch, and put that in place. That way we can make sure the signal is proper before we get carried away, mounting up a bunch of other stuff under the dash, getting in our way there. To make sure you have the switch set up properly as far as it being adjusted, you can use a test light and hook it up to, you know, the wire that power is going to be sent out. In our case, this red wire here. So with that, I got the other end of our test light grounded, and what we're looking for is when this brake pedal just starts to get pushed down, you want that light to illuminate. So that's about perfect. You know, you want a little bit of give in there, but I could feel just the brake pedal getting pressure, and once I get to that point, that light is illuminated, and that's how we're set up. If you got to push it way down here, you need to adjust the switch. If the light's always on before you even push it, you need to push the switch in more and find that sweet spot. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster stoplight switch on our 2023 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited.